Next, get your sinew and your special glover's needle, thread it, tie it off, pretty straightforward. And then you put your two hides together. The two pieces that have the numbers facing out, it'll be also the smooth side facing out, that's the actual skin side. The inner side that's rough, that was the side that was fleshed, that was facing into the animal's organs. You got these 3 paper clips, and the clips are used to bring the edges together to align them. And the idea is that you will start by sewing at this edge right here while it's aligned, and the clips are holding it in place. And as you move along, move the clips up, aligning those edges, and just keep going, aligning those edges, and the further you go along, you move those clips, and you'll see that the skins will start to pucker, which is exactly what they should do to make space for the material that's gonna shake and rattle inside. Some helpful hints. I'll show the stitching that I've got. I started a little bit tighter towards the end because it's important that this stays, that this end that the stick will be going into is really solid and tight. Keeping in mind that the stitching will go all the way around and then we'll go back around again. So we actually stitch twice. But some helpful hints is to use some of the cut off hide that is wet and soft and put it underneath. And then place your needle at about an eighth and I'd say a 1/16 from the edge and an eighth from the previous stitch. And then what I do is use a handy dandy stone. Now you could use a loonie or a toonie. You could use a cap if that feels solid enough, or you could use a thimble proper. I just like using stone. As you can see, I've used it plenty of times before. And what I do is I push it using that piece beneath as a protective layer, but also just helps me to get through. And then I use the stone to push it all the way through. And it just saves your thumb, saves some effort. The real tip is using an extra piece underneath to have something to go through. Otherwise, you'll end up dulling your needle going into whatever is your hard surface that you're working on. Pull it tight. That's exactly why it helps to flip those down. Pull it tight. A few more tips. If the edge starts to dry out, which it does as you come around, especially as you're handling it, just wet it a bit. The needle goes through better, and also the stitching pulls better when it's not drying out while you're sewing. The other thing is that as you're coming around while you're sewing, it can be really helpful to actually put the needle on an angle going in towards the center as you come along and the tension pulls between the two pieces of hide. The one underneath, the piece underneath, will often pull back and will end up being further behind the edge, and then you'll pierce into just the lip of it instead of far enough in. So I recommend as you're coming further along, putting the needle on a slight angle as you're pushing in with your stone or your toonie or your thimble. Hopefully it's going good for you. So I took a break, give my hands a break, and I soaked the hides overnight so that it stays nice and supple. I took the clips off and kept the needle out so they don't rust. And I just wanted to point out that in the end I actually opted, as this was my stitching preference, or at least that's how Spirit came through me, to keep my stitches really close at 1/16. But I was describing how for folks who might just like to stitch more spaciously, that you can do your first round at 1/8, etc., going around, which would be skipping every other stitch I did, and you'll do your first pass, and then you'll come back around and stitch in between. And so it'll end up with the same results at 1/16 and have that good tightness. Your stitches will end up looking, they'll be crossing each other, look like X's. The idea is ultimately to have a really tight stitching so that beads and seeds and whatever materials you use inside your shaker to make the shake and the rattle, that they don't fall out as once the hide dries and tightens. So again, it's to your preference, and I fully trust the intention of your spirit. I hope that you're having fun with this.